instance, I'll put the guy in there, and then I have to put them before where I need it, because causality goes in the forward direction. You see what I'm saying? And then I put this guy to give peace. I'll remember that I did that by putting a link. So what I'm going to do right now is actually show you this example. Let me actually see if I can make it easier with that. Okay. So here is a much simpler planning problem, and I sort of go through the steps, and you have to look at it again slowly. So you have a very simple kind of propositions. Initial state M and N are true. In the goal states, you want P and Q to be true. And I only have two actions. A1, which takes M and gives P and not N. And A2, which takes N and gives Q. First, let's see, can you solve this problem? Initial state M and N are true. I need to have some sequence of these actions A1 and A2. Okay? By the way, one of the interesting things is in planning, it's not required that a plan contains only one instance of a particular action. Sometimes you may have to do A1, A1, A1 5 times. That's okay. But the question is there a sequence that you can make out of A1 and A2 that when applied from the initial state gets you to the goal state? Just think of the two simple sequences, A1, A2 and A2, A1. Okay? Would A1, A2 work? People see this? Would A2, A1 work? You see this? So there is a solution for this problem. You should be able to do this progression way and regression way. Two exam problems. The last one is doing it in the plan space way, which is exactly what I said, which is I will start with a dummy initial state action I, give me goal state action G, such the initial state has all the effects of initial state, which is M and N, so basically it gives M and N. And goal state G requires P and Q, right? I think of goal state as itself as a sync action. So to realize that G requires P and Q, I will remember that Q at G and P at G are required. Right? These are called open conditions. If a plan has open conditions, it's still partial plan, it's not done. If you have open tasks, if you have a list of things to do and some things haven't been ticked off, you're not done yet. Okay? So open condition is called a flaw. And if you have an open condition flaw, then you're not done yet. Then the way the planning works is, you pick one of the flaws. Till now you only have open condition flaws. You pick one. So in this particular case, I've decided to pick Q at G. Consider all the ways of making Q true at G in that partial plan. It can happen in putting an action which gives Q. Or if initial state itself gives Q and it's already there, then just using what is there already. You have to consider both. One is called step addition. You're adding a new guy. You're bringing a new guy in to help with this goal. Or you ask an existing employee, do this task too. You see what I'm saying? Okay? So then basically, in this particular case, I'll only show you one path that survives. You have to consider other paths to do the search. Because since I know how to get to the solution, I will just go through the one path that will work. Okay? So then I will essentially put A2, I'll put A2 in, and then I'll remember that A2 has to give Q to G. So if A2 has to give Q to G, it better be coming before G. You can't give stuff to people unless you come before them. And it better come after I, because nobody can come before I. Because initial state is the very beginning of the plan. Okay? So what I did was I put an A2 and I put this ordering, and I remembered that A2 is giving Q to G. This one is called a causal link. And it's just a bookkeeping. You remembered why you hired this employee. Hey, you were hired to do this task for me. And so if you don't, I'll remember that and fire you. Okay? And then I continue. And then I also want to work, then the problem is when I put A2 has a precondition. It requires M. The problem with the hiring employees is that they need like a seat to sit in. They might need water, they might need breaks, all that stuff, problems. Okay? But you have to then satisfy them. Those are preconditions. So this guy requires, A2 requires M. So I just remember that M as an open condition at A2. Just a bookkeeping. I have this other thing to do. You see what I'm saying? Very natural. Okay? And then at this point, I have this open condition, and I also have P at G is an open condition. Q at G is no longer an open condition because it's been supported by a cousin. Okay? At that point, I will continue, and then at this point, I want to work on P at G, let's say. If I want to work on P at G, I will then bring in somebody, A1, which gives P. So I put A1 here, right here, and it has to come before G. It has to come after I. As of now, I have no reason to make A1 come either before or after A2. Do you see what I'm saying? This partial order planning is also called least commitment planning. You only order things when it's desperately needed. You bring in people only when they have something useful to do. Okay? So now it's become partially ordered. You agree, right? Because now A2 and A1 can be done in any order and that will be consistent with the plan. Now A1 is giving P to G. And then A1 again requires M, right? A1 requires M. So I have to write M at A1. At this point, I have M at A1 is an open condition. I have a list of open conditions, right? M at A1 is an open condition, and I have N at A2 is an open condition. Those are two flaws that I need to reduce. When my flaws becomes nil, then I'm done. It's a flawless plan. Now, the last one to mention is, in addition to having open condition flaws, you can have unsafe link flaws. Which is, you thought this guy will be supporting P to this guy. And this other guy comes in, who is going to delete P? And this guy is not ordered. So he could potentially come in between the production of P and consumption of P. This is a disruptive employee. You need the disruptive employees to be taken care of, because otherwise you thought, oh, Q will be right, Q will hold, but it's not going to hold. So the question then is that happening here? Okay, so in fact, we'll continue further. It turns out that it didn't yet happen. I'll actually have to work on N at A2. I decided to work on N at A2. Because remember, N at A2 is an open condition. And N is already true in the initial state. N is already true in the initial state. And so I can essentially give N to A2 by just this. And nothing more, because I anyway is coming before 8. I didn't have to do anything further. At this point, I will notice that A1 basically kills N. Right? A1 kills N. I is giving N to A2. As things stand right now, A1 can come in between I and A2. If it comes in between, N will no longer be true. You got your first unsafe link flaw. Okay? And then at that point, I need to resolve the unsafe link flaws. Open conditions, the way you resolve them is you bring in new guys and you use existing guys to help with that condition. For unsafe link flaws, basically you have a disruptive employee. You get the disruptive employee out of the region of disruption. You see what I'm saying? So basically, I need to make sure that N is protected between I and A2. Right? And this guy is going to kill N. So he should be either coming here or after. So I have to consider both. One is called promotion, one is called demotion. It turns out nobody can come before I. So the promotion branch can be killed right away. And the demotion branch is what I wound up using here. Okay? And at this point, you can establish M at A1 and you'll be done. At that point, there won't be any open condition class or unsafe link class. This is plan space planning. I'll stop here for people who have to leave, and then I'll continue further.
So when it says if it takes a good that makes it a bit tricky. Use me for your hand.
Okay, let's get this done. Okay, so this rather, yeah, go ahead.
Change and create it after, like it won't go back and change. Like it's taking them and n from I, right?
Yeah.
And so going forward, even will change n. It won't like go to the initial stage. And
But that doesn't matter. I don't care about n. My goals are P and Q.
why was there a need to draw A2 and A1? A1 is still taking its n from I, and it's not going to change n there. So A2 will still be getting a positive n.
No. A1 takes M,
Yeah.
and it is killing N, and it cannot kill N until A2 uses it. See, the consumption, the producer for N for A2 is I. Okay, you're making sure that the threat is not coming in the range where you are getting I giving N to A2. That's pretty much what you're doing. It's very natural. In some sense, if I have a large plan, if you have a long plan, and something slightly goes wrong, you fix it exactly this way in real life. You don't say, oh, my plan is dead, let me start from scratch and come up with a completely new plan. You don't do that. You essentially try to deal with the flaw that existed there. Okay? So this is basically partial order planning. In fact, it doesn't at all look like a great idea because basically you did what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 depth. The solution is occurring at the 6th depth. But this is systematic search. But if you understand the notion of flaws, you can, instead of doing systematic search, you can do hill climbing search. Specifically, in plan space planning, you're searching directly in the space of plans, so you don't really need to remember how you got to that plan. You only have to remember what are the flaws in that current plan, which means the path is actually not important. You see what I'm saying? The path is not important. Just like in a SAT, the assignment matters, the order in which you assign doesn't matter. In which case, you can start with a partial plan and then start fixing it. That will be hill climbing. Okay? I basically just will tell you that you could start with an initial plan, and if it, make up some plan and see, in fact, you can start with an empty plan, like the way we did before, or you can start with some plan that you think will have all the actions that are sort of needed, but you don't know the ordering and the preconditions, etc. And then you start fixing it. You will see the number of flaws in that action, in that plan, the open conditions and safe leads, and then decide for each, pick a flaw that you're going to reduce, and then see if you reduce in a particular way, how many additional flaws will still be remaining. So in fact, the kind of changes, just like you could flip orderings in the SAT assignment, here you can either throw in an action, or you can remove an ordering or put in an ordering. And for each of them, you can see, what is the maximum amount of loss that will still remain, and be greedy and pick the one change that seems to reduce the loss the most. This idea has actually been done, and there's a planner called LPG which exactly works that way. And basically, it is very useful to understand that you can fix plans without having to think in terms of going from initial state to goal state and goal state to initial state. Now, here's an interesting question. What in the MDP terminology does this remind you of? Searching directly in the space of policies instead of searching in the space of values has some weak connections, not full connections, but weak connections. Okay, and it's a useful connection to kind of keep in mind. In particular, this idea is kind of related to policy gradient algorithms. Policy gradient algorithms. The difference is in the policy gradient, the goodness is completely is decided essentially, the question ultimately in all the hill climbing searches will be what is your goodness function and how do you estimate it? And the changes in the policy gradient tend to be decided by the gradient descent. Here the changes are being decided by which one reduces the flaws the most. It's a kind of a gradient descent, it's a kind of a hill climbing search. Okay? But it's kind of useful to understand as baroque as plan space search looks, this actually, you're more likely to remember this idea. Because in some sense, this is how you do plans. You don't do full searches, but you sort of start with something and then say, oh, I need one more guy to support this goal. Oh, I'll put that guy in. This guy and that guy don't get along, so I'll put them in different rooms. This is the kind of stuff we do in essentially solving, planning problems ourselves. So it's a lot more natural for that. Okay. So it's a useful thing to understand. And notice now that notice now that the notion of the search state. Remember, there's a world state and there's a search state. In A-star search itself, the search state is the search node, right? The source of search state changes between progression, regression, and plan space planning. In the case of progression, the search state is a complete world state. In the case of regression, it is a partial state. In the case of plan space planning, it is a partial plan. It's just a set of constraints and actions. The constraints are basically the precedence constraints and the causal link constraints. Now here's an interesting question. Notice that when we were doing plan space planning, we wrote things like this: A1 before A2 before A3. Ordering. When you do progression, also you will kind of have, let's say, A1, then A2, then A3, etc. Right? Are the orderings the same? Semantically, are the orderings the same? I want you to understand that this ordering is what's called contiguity, immediately after ordering. In progression search, when A2 is applied after A1, that means nobody else can come in between, like at all. Like there is no sum between them. It's a contiguity ordering. Whereas, remember what happened when we did plan space search. Up until here, we basically thought A2 will be coming before G. And then we actually put A1 to come before A2 and G. So the orderings are precedence links. They are not contiguity links. This is how again you tend to think. I'll do this task, and then I'll do this task, and then is not immediately there. And so if you need to do one other task, you can put it in between these two tasks. Rubber band precedence. This is what partial ordering is all about. You see what I'm saying? If A1 has to precede A2, that means any real execution where A1 comes some number of steps before A2, it's consistent. Whereas if A1 should be immediately before A2, then the only executions that will be consistent would be where A1 is done right before A2. it's useful to think about. So basically you can say that everything is really plan space planning. Everything is actually plan space planning. What progression search was doing is it was searching in the space of prefixes of the plans. Regression search is searching in the space of suffixes of the plans. Plan space search is searching in the space of full partial plans. Which actually means that you can combine all three of them. In fact, there's an old paper that I wrote basically that shows that you can actually, one level do plan space search, then regression, then progression, then plan space, then regression, then progression, you'll still be fine. Okay? But it's much more useful for you to just think of them as three different searches, for this particular class. Okay, that's basically about what the search node looks like. Okay, couple of things in the few minutes that we have left, basically, is first of all understand that in this case, so nobody ever talked about complexity of A-star search. Because any problem can be written as an A-star search problem. We did talk about complexity of SAT. Because only SAT problems can be written as SAT. Many other problems can be written as SAT, so anything that can be written as SAT has the complexity of SAT. SAT was NP-hard. Right? The question is, what is the complexity class of this kind of planning? Interestingly, it turns out that it's actually harder than NP complete. It's what is called P-space complete. It's not NP complete because you can have problems for which the plan is exponentially long in terms of the input size. And so, searching for something to be in a class NP, if I give you a solution, you should be able to verify it in polynomial time. You see what I'm saying? But if the damn thing is exponentially long, you can't verify it in polynomial time. You have to at least go through all the steps at the minimum. You can't do LGTM, right? You actually have to see whether the plan makes sense, right? So it turns out that you can notice that to be able to say that a particular class of problems is hard. All you need to say is there exists at least one instance of a problem which has exponentially long solutions. When was the last time you thought of problems whose solutions are exponentially long in terms of the input size? All of you did this, it's written there too. Towers of Hanoi. Remember Towers of Hanoi?
Yes.
It's a painful problem, right? In fact, that's the reason why all these cultures came up with all these stories that these priests in Benares or in Vietnam or some other place are slowly taking the 64 towers and following the rules to get them into the third peg. And given the priestly, stately gait of priests, when they're done, the world will come to an end. And it turns out that essentially for 64 pegs, 64 discs, these four priests have to make 2 power 64 moves. And you know how priests are. They're not exactly the gym kind of people. Right? So they'll take their own sweet time. So we don't need to worry about world ending anytime soon. Okay? But remember that Tower of Hanoi is a classic case of a problem where the input size and the solution length are exponentially related. Now I'll tell you that you can write Tower of Hanoi problem for any number of disks as a PDL problem. Just like you did the one-way rocket, you can write Tower of Hanoi as a PDL problem. Which then tells you that since that guy kills you, because that guy is exponentially large solution, it's not in class NP anymore. And it turns out there is actually a formal proof saying it is the hardest problems that can be done in polynomial space. That's what P-space complete means. Now that's another very interesting question. Why is it possible to do this in polynomial space? Computation has to be done in polynomial space. Depth first search. Depth first search will take polynomial space. Can you solve planning problems with depth first search? Yes. So there exists a polynomial space available for this. And it's not in NP and it's in P space. So that's kind of a useful thing to understand that in terms of the hardness of the problems, SAT is NP and action planning is P space. But if you say, okay, is there a plan of a certain length, where you give the length upfront as the input parameter, then it's no longer P space complete, it's just polynomial, it's still be NP complete. And in particular, this is a strange thing, if you are asking bounded length planning problems. Is given in the initial state and goal state, is there a plan of length 15 that can solve this problem? I only care about plans up to length 15 or less. It will be in NP complete. Now you know who else is NP complete? Which is SAT. So in theory, it should be possible to reduce planning into a SAT problem. See what I'm saying? And in fact, the textbook tells you of a particular plan called SAT plan, which was done by the same guys who did GSAT and WOCSAT. And what they do is they look for a length of the plan and then set up a huge SAT theory, a whole bunch of clauses. That if you can find a model for them, I can convert that model into a plan. It turns out it's not a bad idea, actually. So the same problem, many different ways of solving it with different trade-offs. One of the advantages of converting it to SAT problem is you don't need to write your own planning algorithm, because the people are out there trying to improve SAT solver search like every year, because Intel cares about how fast SAT problems are solved. You see what I'm saying? So if you can convert your problem into a problem that other people are desperately trying to increase efficiency of, then you can just sit in the easy chair and assume that every year your efficiency will improve. Okay, so that's one of the other things. Okay, and then the last couple of things I want to mention is basically the question. One of the questions. This is the thing that I want to show you. You can look it up later. But sub-goal interactions are important in terms of heuristics for planning. The question will be thinking of the interactions between the sub-goals and trying to relax those interactions and use them to solve the problem. Remember how the heuristics come from in A-star search. You abstract the problem and solve the abstract version. And the solution for the abstract version will be a lower bound on the true solution cost. And so you can then use it as a heuristic. Remember that. That's exactly what we said many weeks back. So the question then is, what do you relax? And it turns out that the right thing to relax for planning is interactions. Remember I talked about independent, sub-goal, positive and negative. Here's a cute way of understanding them. So if I have two goals are independent, if I have a plan of length 10 for goal 1, length 10 for goal 20 for goal 2, I can just concatenate them in any order. And the plan for goal 1, goal 2 will be 30 length plan. That's it. Okay? If it is positively interacting, that means the better plan for G1 and G2 might be less than 30. Because doing one of the goals probably help you do the other of the goals partly. If it's negatively interacting, then the length of the plan G1 and G2 can be between L1 plus L2, which if they are independent, and infinity. Do you see why infinity is possible? Because I can ask you to solve a goal where G1, the goal is G1 and not G1. That's the goal. So I want both G1 and not G1 to be true in the end. So you come up with a plan for G1, that may be 15 days, 15 length. You come up with a plan for not G1, that may be 4. But you can't put them together. Because there is really no plan that will give you both G1 and not G1. The real length of the plan for that negative interaction will be infinitely large. See, it's these interactions that make planning search hard. And what heuristics try to do is essentially relax these interactions, ignore the interactions. And so I just want to, so that's the simplest, dumbest heuristic, just so that you have talked about one at least, is set difference heuristic. If you're doing progression search, let's say, you have a current state where you are and a goal state where the certain things should have certain values. You can see how many of the goals are already holding in the current state. Okay? And if in fact all goals are holding, then its heuristic cost is 0 because it's already goal state. If there are 15 goals and 14 are holding, its heuristic cost is 1, and so on. This is called set difference heuristic. We just basically looking at the size of the difference between the goal state and the current state. That means how many of the goals that you want to achieve are not already true in the current state. It's a reasonable heuristic. The interesting question, since we spent so much time talking about heuristics and admissibility, is this set difference heuristic admissible? And is it efficient? First, let's talk about efficiency. Is it informed? Is it a good heuristic? Like, for example, imagine the 2 goals you have. Get an A+ in this class by on the whatever the day of the exam. Get an A+ in the class, have a diet coke. 2 goals. I'll give you a plan which says buy the diet coke. Already 1 goal is satisfied. And another plan which says huge number of actions to try to get you A+, that has no diet coke. By this heuristic, both of these plans are equally distant from the goal. But if you think those are true, then you are in big trouble. Because some goals are much harder to achieve than other goals. And just saying that the number of goals are being counted is not enough. In fact, because of which, it's a bad heuristic, it's not an informed heuristic. The question is it at least admissible? Remember that last time we talked about a bad heuristic is h equal to 0. The good thing going for it was it's at least admissible. Is set difference heuristic admissible? No. Do you see what I'm saying? Because it is possible that G1 and G2 have positive interactions. And in fact, while G1 requires one action A1, it also gives G2. Do you see what I'm saying? So the difference, so the number of actions required to get G1 and G2 together is just one action. So, because of which it's neither admissible nor is it informed.